Don't go vegan this month. Let's have a look. Hello everyone and welcome to a new episode of Heiser Says, the first for for 2019. Happy New Year, and I hope if you've celebrated last night, you've got a hangover cure if you drank too much, or you've had a great time with your family. We were boring and went to bed nice and early. It's funny how that happens. So, January is Veganuary. Veganuary? Veganuary. Could you go vegan for 1 month? Now, this has been pushed by SBS, and I was actually working on my video about the keto diet to start the year when this appeared in my feed, and I thought I have to do a video about it. Now, I have gone vegan. My wife and I did a vegan diet for 20 days. We did a 20-day fast called the Daniel fast, and this is from a biblical fast, and it's pretty much just vegetables. Nothing else you can add. No salts, no coffee, no breads, no grains, just vegetables in a soup. And it worked really well for us to get over our sugar addiction and to realize the processed rubbish we were eating, but it was not a long-term diet. Now, I've just done 2 recent videos about the vegan diet. One focusing on how it's dangerous for children and can result in malnourishment. And particularly, even if you're breastfeeding, it's even dangerous as well. And the other, how it's turning into a religion in some regards, with people treating it as a religious belief or an ideological opinion, because the evidence is against it. So, animal rights activists and environmental activists are encouraging people to try a vegan diet for the first month of 2019, but dietitians warn first-timers. Well, yeah, because the diet is inherently unbalanced, it results in malnutrition, and it's not a healthy diet. By itself, it isn't. Make sure they're still getting all the essential vitamins and nutrients. So what they're saying is supplement your unbalanced diet with commercial products and pills and supplements to kind of even it out. It'll all be good. Let's spend a fortune on organic vegetables and don't have any chemicals sprayed on it, then buy something that's produced in a laboratory. I don't understand how people can rationalize this stuff. With each new year comes resolutions to do better. Well, actually, this would be interesting. Let me know what your resolutions are in the comments below, guys. Are you planning to get healthier? This is a typical one. Do you want to work out more, improve your education, something else in your life? I don't really know if I have one, to be honest. Mine's more just to keep up with the videos. We'll see how that goes. So, in 2019, an international charity campaign has also challenged people to try the vegan diet for a month in January. Now, in some ways, it might actually be a good thing. It might help people get off their sugar addiction if they eat food that isn't processed. But if they eat vegan processed stuff that is, it won't work. Veganuary campaign started in Britain in 2014, good lord, and provides participants with vegan meal plans, nutritional advice, and tips on eating out. Animals Australia spokesman Lisa Chalk said it's a fun way for people to try a new, more ethical way of eating. And I've got a response to this claim that it's ethical for the environment. If you think animals are the same as humans, then I would consider you a fool. They're not. They're not sentient. Okay? It's that simple. If there were no humans and just animals, you wouldn't have any of the miraculous achievements that exist. It's a fun and positive ways to dip your toes in the water, see what vegan food is all about, and feel like crap in the process because you're not meeting all your dietary requirements. Global movement towards a sustainable future. Wow. And what concerns me is that SBS doesn't give a balanced assessment of this proposal. This is just advertising. This isn't journalism. This is just marketing spiel. Because they don't go into any comparison, any criticism of this. Around 300,000 people worldwide are expected to make Veganuary the pledge in... Oh, wow. Well, good on them. Fools. A vegan diet is devoid of all animal products, including meat, eggs, and dairy. I really consider this a first world trendy thing, this diet, because there is no way in human history that people could have survived on purely a vegan diet. Hunter-gatherer societies before farming would not have been able to get enough vegetables or fruit to meet their calorie requirements. Don't people understand this? Many people choose to follow a plant-based diet because they have concerns for animal welfare or over the effects of or regarding the effects farming can have on the environment. Well, that's the thing. That depends on the way where you source your meat. If you're sourcing pasture-grown, slow-grown cattle that's treated well, you're going to get a better outcome for the environment and for the animals with regards to their welfare than a grain-fed feedlot cattle that's stuck in a little pen. That's what people should be educating about. Because if everyone became vegan all of a sudden, they'll just kill the cattle. They won't let it run free because they're worried about these domesticated animals destroying the native animals. So they'll just kill them. That's the only way that Australia can reduce the carbon emissions from our herd. It's to kill them. It's to slaughter them. So these environmentalists are pushing all these things for carbon reductions from our farming, and it's going to result in the death of animals. So I don't know how these two groups can be aligned. I think they just don't understand the implications of what they're actually talking about, which wouldn't be the first time, would it? Australia is the third fastest growing vegan market in the world. Wow, maybe that's why Australia is becoming such a socialist-leaning country, because you've got all these soy boys everywhere. Can you explain another reason? In the past 5 years, there's been a 92% increase in the number of vegan products launched in Australian supermarkets. Well, that shows you there's one born every minute. Being vegan for 1 year saves 365 animals, 1,000 square meters of forest, 3,320 kilograms of CO2, and 6,600 kilograms of grain. So what? I'll look at Lombard's take on this and some criticism of it, and he's actually a vegetarian. So Lisa Chalk from the Animal Protection Organisation Animals Australia told SBS News they are seeing a growing number of Australians open to trying a vegan or vegetarian diet. Here in Australia, there's a real hunger, the irony, for kinder, more sustainable foods. 1 in 3 Australians are already cutting out meat from their diet or cutting it back dramatically. And I'm the exact opposite of this. Our family we've significantly increased our meat consumption, and the health benefits have been, frankly, quite radical. So let's have a look at Lombard's take here. And he is the author of Born Lomborg. He's from originally the Copenhagen Consensus. He's the author of the Skeptical Environmentalist. And I will put a link to it below if you want to get it on Amazon. And this is actually a very good book because he was an environmentalist, but he was skeptical of everything that they were proposing. And he pulls apart a lot of these claims. So for many environmental campaigners, eating meat is fast becoming as repellent as smoking, behavior to be discouraged or even banned. But is your hamburger really to blame for climate change, and would going vegetarian really help? What do you think? Before I read any further, what do you reckon? Yeah, you know the answer already. Christina Figures, the former United Nations official responsible for the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement, which has been proven will have no impact at all on the climate. Okay? So look at that. An expert that's achieved something that's doing nothing. A lot of these people are professional bureaucrats. Has a startling vision for restaurants of the future. Anyone who wants a steak should be banished. You're kidding. How about restaurants in 10 to 15 years start treating carnivores the same way that smokers are treated? There you go. This is ideological. This is completely ideological. Figures suggested during a recent conference, if they want to eat meat, they can do it outside the restaurant. Oh, good Lord. What a horrific thing to say. Even in jest. So this is worrying if the academic or the professionals on a global scale are publicly saying these things when the health benefits to eating meat are irrefutable. That is shocking. Okay, and a lot of people on the planet are vegetarians because they cannot afford to buy meat. Are we going to get a dystopian future, as one commenter said on a previous video, that the corporations will grow us red slime in a factory, we'll eat that, we won't have healthy meat? I don't want that for my children, and I don't want people to be able to say things like this and not be criticized, because it's just idiotic. In case you've missed this development, eating meat is fast becoming as repellent as smoking to many green campaigners. Yes, well, they're ignorant, I'd argue. They haven't really done much study. It is behavior to be discouraged or even banned. That's because your hamburger is being blamed for climate change. Well, probably a Big Mac hamburger is. Or those trendy new $30 burgers that you can get in a place. That's insane. Meat production, especially raising cattle, emits methane and requires carbon dioxide intensive inputs. In the breathless language of recent reporting, a huge reduction in meat eating is essential to avoid climate breakdown. Sure, because pasture-fed cows don't capture a lot of carbon as well on the pastures. I've been a vegetarian my entire adult life because I don't want to kill animals, so I can emphasize with the interest in promoting less meat in our diets. But I want to make sure the science is right. Oh, there we go, there's the problem. He wants to make sure his decisions are based on accurate thinking. It's not, mate, it should just be about the narrative. Don't you understand how the world works these days? When you look beyond the headlines, those arguing for banishing meat eaters from restaurants and calling on everyone to change their diets are often cherry-picking the data while ignoring basic facts. Reading the popular press on this topic, you find plenty of articles suggesting that eliminating meat consumption could cut greenhouse gas emissions by 50% or more. That's massive. It's also massively misleading. Now, if you're not familiar with any of Lomborg's work, look him up. He's really good. He's got a great TED Talk that I watched nearly a decade ago now when I was back at university, and it was fantastic. It really woke me up to a lot of this stuff. It was Hans Rosling and Lomborg made me critical of a lot of what we were being taught. Even in architecture, there's a very huge green push in architecture, and it's just no basis to it. Importantly, the 50% reduction in emissions is achieved by going a lot further than vegetarianism. It requires going completely vegan, which means stopping eating and using any animal products: milk, eggs, honey, meat, poultry, seafood, fur, leather, wool, gelatine, and much else. This is not going to be a mainstream dietary and lifestyle regimen anytime soon. This sounds like there's been an apocalypse living like that. That's the thing with, I've worked with vegans before, and, it's just ludicrous. Even the way that you grow wheat, if you're eating wheat as a vegan, when you harvest it, animals die in the harvesting process. Field rats die, insects die. So I blame it on malnutrition, so their brains are impaired. They're intellectually impaired through long-term malnutrition. And there is evidence that that happens. Maybe they were raised as vegan kids. Still, the media suggests that going vegetarian can achieve a reduction of 20 to 35% in an individual's personal emissions, which is that's just utter BS. Okay, if you hold on to your phone for a few more years, don't buy it every year, you're going to have more impact. How many of those vegans want all the latest Apple products and buying all these aluminium manufactured products that are shipped all over the world that have huge amounts of embodied energy that are, contain conflict minerals, but yet they think they're making up for it because they're not eating meat, which should probably be locally sourced. But there's not a person's entire emissions. They are those emissions emitted just from food. 4/5 of emissions are ignored, which means the impact is actually 5 times lower. Okay, so they're artificially arguing a point. If we turn to the academic literature on emission cuts from going vegetarian, a systematic survey of peer-reviewed studies shows that a non-meat diet will likely reduce an individual's emissions by the equivalent of 540 kilograms of CO2. Now, I would like to compare and contrast that to a vegan diet. A vegan diet to a carnivore diet or a keto diet with intermittent fasting. Sure, you're eating meat. You're eating more meat, but you're eating less. If you only have one big meal a day, For the average, I guess with calories, but anyway, I would be interested to see. For the average person in the industrialized world, that means cutting emissions by just 4.3%. But this still overstates the effect because it ignores an age-old and well-described economic phenomenon known as the rebound effect. That's one to remember. Vegetarian diets are slightly cheaper, and saved money will be spent on other goods and services that cause additional greenhouse gas emissions. You're right. In the United States, states vegetarians save 7%, UK 15% of their food budgets. A Swedish study shows a vegetarian diet is 10% cheaper, freeing up 2% of the individual's total budget. That extra spending will cause more CO2 emissions, which the study concludes will cancel out half the saved emissions from going vegetarian. Pardon me. That's one thing that's true with, if you want to go keto, or if you want to go carnivore, if you want to even eat good meat. So, we got we got a pasture-fed cow. We had to get it brought up from Melbourne, slaughtered and then chopped up by a butcher. And that was more expensive. But you want the quality. That's the thing. And so you just make the sacrifice. What do you want? Buy more crap, or get your Netflix? Or no, I'll put that $120 a year to some good meat. In a developed country setting, the reality is that going entirely vegetarian for the rest of your life will mean reducing your carbon emissions by about 2%. That's not significant. And what about the health consequences? If you have additional health consequences, if you're going entirely vegetarian, you're spiking your insulin, you're getting metabolic syndrome, then you get diabetes, you have all these other issues in later life, you have additional healthcare costs. I bet you that hasn't been looked at because it's kind of frowned upon, or people don't believe it. But you're seeing more and more people are getting heart disease, are getting metabolic syndrome in the States that look super skinny. They're skinny on the outside, but they're fat on the inside. So I think that would be an interesting point to study, to look at the actual potential negative health consequences over an entire life and the additional medical costs. This is a well-established result, but it still surprises many people who believe that becoming vegetarian should achieve more. Well, most people don't really dig into anything. Indeed, when I first highlighted these figures, two British researchers attacked my approach and even claimed that I must be cherry-picking. But the figure is the best estimate of a meta-study, not the result of choosing a single study with the highest or lowest impact. There you go. In contrast, to bolster their counter-argument that vegetarianism has a much higher impact, the academics chose to rely on only two studies that just happened to have two of the highest estimates. There you go. Then they disregarded the one showing a lower effect and rounded up the figures given by the other. They even ignored the rebound effect, which halves the real-world impact, although the literature clearly says when evaluating the environmental consequences of vegetarianism, the rebound effect of the savings should be taken into account. Well, that's interesting. I've learned about the rebound effect today. That's a new thing. Of course, fiddling with numbers to fit our preconceptions doesn't fool the planet. The fact is, instead of going completely vegetarian for the rest of your life, you could reduce greenhouse gas emissions by the exact same amount by spending $6 a year using the European Emissions Trading Scheme while eating anything you want. $6 a year. $6 a year. I remember when I'm flying, interstate, and you can offset your carbon for a few dollars. It doesn't make sense to me. Are we that efficient in offsetting carbon? Maybe we are, but $6 a year. So you could be vegetarian for your whole life, or the cost of what? A beer. One beer a year you put buying carbon credits would offset it. I think that's hilarious. An emission cut of a couple of percent points is nothing to sneer at, but it is certainly not what will save the planet. The inconvenient truth, notice how he sticks that in there, is that few individual actions can transform the battle against climate change. One action that could make a genuine difference is campaigning for far more spending on global investments in green energy research and development. Yeah, I would argue looking at nuclear as well. This technology needs to be massively developed if we're ever going to bring forward the day when alternatives can outcompete fossil fuels. Yes, he's got a point there. He's got a rational point. Because right now they can't outcompete fossil fuels. And our electricity prices are going up, so our quality of life is decreasing. So then people will probably spend on less environmentally conscious decisions, or spend their money on more, shall we say, little luxuries. More R&D is also needed to reduce the carbon impact of farming. as well as to develop and produce at scale artificial meat, which could cut greenhouse gas emissions by 96% relative to conventionally produced meat. Yeah, I don't agree with that. I don't like the idea of artificially produced meat because I don't think we have the capability to produce it with all of the micronutrients and nutrients at the same advantage as current meat production. If you want to argue that, just look at the difference between lot-fed grain cattle and pasture-fed cattle. There is a significant difference in the quality of those two meats and the benefit you derive from eating that as a human. Going from pasture-fed or grain-fed cattle to pasture-fed cattle increases your testosterone level and your sex drive, increases your energy. So I wouldn't argue in favor of this, but I can see where he's coming from. Like much campaigning, vigorous plans for meat eaters is disturbing because it suggests that the former UN climate chief is focused on banning behavior she doesn't like based on flimsy evidence, over-the-top newspaper reporting. Yeah, she is an authoritarian. She's a vegan authoritarian. At least one good thing, if the great civil war of the world ever comes and the vegans rise up, it won't take much to beat them. It also suggests a narrow focus on the world's rich. It is incredibly self-obsessed to talk about banishing steak eaters from restaurants when 1.4 billion people are vegetarian through poverty, wanting desperately to be able to afford meat. As a vegetarian for ethical reasons, I will be first to say that there are many good reasons to eat less meat. Sadly, making a huge difference to the climate isn't one of them. So, I quite like Bourne. I like his work. He recently did an interview with Jordan Peterson. Look him up on TED. He's got a really good talk there, really good interview there. So guys, thank you all very much for joining me for my first episode for Heiser Says. I am still working on my keto journey video, and it's going to take a bit more to put it all together. But please let me know what you think. Are you going to go vegan for this month, or are you going to try keto for this month? Or are you just recovering from your hangover today? Well, thank you all very much, and have a happy New Year's Day, and see you all tomorrow. Please like, share, and subscribe. Bye for now.